Hi everyone, my name is Cynthia. Let's talk books. And right now I'm holding my dog hostage here so she will let me talk about all the books that I read in December. Oh my goodness. Okay, so lots of good reading and a little bit more romance heavy than normal, but it was great. I felt like I had a pretty good reading month in December. So let's get started. The first book that I finished in December was actually by Chiang, and the version that I read is called Arrival, but I think it was originally published as Stories of Your Life and Others, but then because they did a movie on one of the stories, they published one based on Arrival, and that's the one my library had. But this is the second collection of short stories I've read by Chiang, and his writing is just so amazing. He writes these science fiction stories that just like suck you in, and some of them are pretty short, others are longer. Either way, they suck you in and they really make you think. There was one about aliens in here that just like was beautiful. There was another one about like angels manifesting on the planet that also just like I just really enjoyed. I love his writing, and honestly I'm going to continue reading everything that's available by Chiang. This one I buddy read with my friend in South Korea too, so his stories are especially great for buddy reading because there's so much to dissect and to analyze, and so it's good to have someone to like, you know, be the sounding board to hear your thoughts and to make you think about things in a different way. And so it was a really great experience to buddy read this collection. The next book that I finished in December was one of my romance novellas. This was Secret Santa by Kati Wilde. I heard about Kati Wilde mostly from Mara over at Books Like Whoa a lot. And when I saw that this novella was on Kindle Unlimited, I downloaded it and it was fantastic. In fact, I'm considering buying the physical copy of the novella because I liked it a lot. I am not always super into holiday novellas, and mostly because I just hadn't delved deep into them, and this year was the year I got really into holiday novellas. The next book that I finished in December was Blameless by Gail Carriger, and this is book number 3 in the Parasol Protectorate series. I have a couple more of books to read in the series, and then I am done with this part of the story. Fortunately, there's a spin-off series, but the Parasol Protectorate series just is so fun. It's a steampunk fantasy series with werewolves, vampires, soulless creatures, and it's a lot of fun. Carriger writes really witty, fun dialogue, and these are super fast to read and just like bring me happiness. Because this is number 3 in the series, I can't say much about it except that I really enjoyed it. And if you've read the Parasol Protectorate series, let me know down below how you feel about it and the spin-offs. Like, are they worth my time? Should I start getting a hold of them or not? But this one I really enjoyed. All right, next was another holiday novella. This was The Midwinter Mail Order Bride by Kati Wilde. So this is a kind of barbarian holiday romance, not even holiday, just a barbarian romance story. It's set in the winter, so it gives it the like holiday vibe, and it's the staff of this new kind of barbarian king have sent a call far and wide in the kingdom for a bride for the king. Only one woman responds, and she arrives, and they decide that she actually has to go back home. And then we're following again. It's a novella, so things happen rather quickly. Which, you know, sometimes you just want, you know, the plot to move along. And that is what holiday novellas do, and these did it really well. In the past, I've been very weary of novellas because they tend to not have the right pacing for me, but these two kind of worked. Then I finally started the Ice Planet Barbarians series. So the first in the Ice Planet Barbarians book I read, and Okay, it gets criticized because there is a very explicit scene of sexual assault at the beginning of the story. In addition, the hero and the heroine's first sexual encounter is a bit iffy. So if where and what I mean is there's not explicit consent in their first sexual encounter, and I was able to deal with those aspects of it because Ruby Dixon has created a really interesting world here. So I'm gonna keep reading the Ice Planet Barbarians, and I hear that there is very much consent in the other books, and I can see that because the alien race in this series is made up of like soft, really nice men that are entirely focused on the women. That's what the hero does here. He is a cinnamon bun hero. In this planet, you have really rough winters, and so these aliens are kind of fit the kind of barbarian trope, but they're not exactly human. They're very human-like, but not. And I'm very intrigued. I'm very intrigued by this world and where the next few books are gonna go. So I will keep reading Ice Planet Barbarians. But again, I do want to make sure you all know that there is an explicit scene of sexual assault at the beginning, and no consent in the first sexual encounter, no explicit consent in the first sexual encounter, and I know that is a deal breaker for many people, so want to put that out there. The next book that I finished in December was African Europeans in an Untold Story by Olivette Otélé. This book I'm going to talk about more in depth because there's several books dealing with the history of Black people in Europe that I want to get to. This first one that I started with here is really good, but it's also very academic. And so it's not necessarily the first one that I would recommend to everyone. This is, I think, primarily I would recommend to any graduate student, getting ready for comprehensive exams, because Otélé does a really nice historiography about what has been written about Africans in Europe. And she goes back to ancient Greece and ancient Rome, although I would argue that we make too much of the connections between ancient Greece and Rome and Western Europe. But either way, because a lot of white nationalist groups like to use that history to present a whitewashed and very racist version of history, Otélé does a good job going back to those periods and showing us how integrated, right, the world was for the Greeks and the Romans. No, the whole world wasn't integrated, but when you're talking about Afro-Eurasia, like, people knew of each other, they traded with each other, they exchanged ideas and goods, and in fact, when you look at the Mediterranean, the people that border the Mediterranean have much more in common with each other than they have with like Northern Europe or other parts of Asia or Sub-Saharan Africa. Like, people interacted very deeply. So she goes back to those. So the first two chapters deal with ancient Greece and in Europe. What I think the chapters that most people are going to be most interested in are going to be the final chapters where they deal with more modern history, and she looks at contemporary history of Africans in Europe. You are getting largely the history of racism towards Black people in Europe, although not exclusively, but that is a big part of the story, and I really enjoyed reading the book, but again, highly academic. The next one that I'm gonna read, I have on good authority, aka Didi over at Brown Girl Reading, read Black and British by David Olusoga, and that's gonna be one of my next books, and I think that one is a lot more readable. He writes very readable, very accessible history, so watch out for my review of that. The next book that I finished in December was Breaking Silence by Linda Castillo, and this is, I forgot which number, it must be like 3 or 4 in the Kate Brookholder series. So this series follows a detective in Ohio, where part of the community she protects is an Amish community, and she is former Amish herself, and so she is kind of that's how the Amish community works. And even though they don't 100% trust her, they trust her more than they would a non-Amish chief of police. She's Caper Coulter is the chief of police. She has a dark past. She works with an FBI agent on a regular basis that she's starting to have feelings for. It's a nice kind of series to delve into. I've been kind of sprinkling books in this series over the last couple of years, and yeah, it's a perfectly good one there. The next book that I finished in December was for my book club. This is Perfume, The Story of a Murder by Patrick Süskind. And this was originally published in German and has been translated. A lot of people really love it, and yeah, I can see why. Now, be aware, there is very explicit like body stuff going on. We're following the story of this individual from the time he is born to kind of the end of his life, and he has a very unique nose for smells, but he himself doesn't have a smell, and so there's a lot of explicit descriptions of body odors. Obviously, the story tells you that this is about a murderer, so murder will happen, and the murders are pretty gory. So if you are a bit squeamish, beware. I can't tell you yeah, this is absolutely a no-go for you, but beware of that. Know that going in. I listened to the audiobook, and the audiobook was had a fantastic narrator, so if you're into audiobooks, this would be a good one. Yeah, so I gave that 5 stars. It was an excellent read, but for a very specific kind of audience. But the next book that I finished in December was Treachery and Death. This is number 32 in the End Death series by J.D. Robb. I am making my way through all of the End Death books. She's got over 50 books now, so I'm over halfway into the series, which is a good sign. This one I really loved. It deals with number 32 deals with rogue cops and Eve Dallas going after them. That's all I'll say. Again, because it's a long-running series, I don't want to give away too many spoilers here. The next couple of books that I read were short novellas. The first is Deal with the Demon by Chance Veritiy. So I heard about this book from Cousin over at Always Doing, and it was a really enjoyable book. A demon manifests for this woman, and he helps her do the dishes and helps her take care of the children, and it's a romance novella. You've got to be if that appeals to you, just go read it. It's fun, yeah. The next book that I finished in December was a book that a bunch of people in Romanslandia were kind of talking about in December. This is The Naughty List by Ellie Mae MacGregor. This is the story of a new Santa. Santa is a generational job, and this is one of his first alone Christmases, and he walks into a house about to put a gift under the tree, and on the couch lies a half-naked woman, and it's called The Naughty List. You know what's gonna happen. All right, the next book that I finished in December, I really want to rave about. This is going to be in one of my favorites of 2020 list. It is How to Fail at Flirting by Denise Williams. I'd heard about this book from several different people. It'd been on my radar for a while because the main character is a professor. Usually I'm weary about that because that's my job, and I would not be able to stand a romance novel where the hero is a student or in any way like that. That is huge. I would never be able to read a book, a romance novel like that. But in this one, there is a conflict of interest, but it's not between the professor and a student. It's between the professor and a kind of outside firm that's brought into the university. That's all I'll say about that. What you really need to know about How to Fail at Flirting is that it really engages with the topic of domestic abuse and domestic violence. That is not what's happening between the hero and the heroine. This is taking place years after the domestic abuse has occurred. The heroine has kind of meets somebody at a bar, and they really hit it off. And in the process of figuring out what it is that this couple has with one another, things from the abusive relationship reemerge, and she is forced to deal with it. And so it's a running issue throughout the whole story and through the new relationship that the book focuses on. It is a romance novel, so you know how it's going to end, but it's so beautifully written. It's witty, it's smart, it is funny. This book, I started reading it on the 23rd, so the night before December 24th, which is a big deal for Latino families. And this was the first Christmas that I did tamales and pozole all by myself. So it was a big night, and I picked this book up to read on the 23rd, and I stayed up the entire night reading it. And that hasn't happened in a while, and the fact that it happened before the 24th kind of screwed up my morning of the 24th, but it was so worth it. This book is fantastic. Just fantastic. I hope that for people for whom domestic violence is not a huge trigger, that you pick it up, because it's so worth it. Don't be deterred by that topic, even though it is central to the story. It is written really, really, really well. There's a good payoff, excellent payoff at the end. And the chemistry between the hero and the heroine, what kind of relationship that they form is just fantastic. I cannot say enough good things about it. In fact, I loved it so much that immediately after finishing it, went and looked at what other books Denise Williams had written, and it turns out that this is her debut novel, and I can't wait to see what else she has for us in the future. It's just so well written. The next book that I finished was Shadow of Night by Deborah Harkness. This is book number 2 in a Discovery of Witches, the Discovery of Witches series. And I put this book in my most disappointing of 2020, mostly because the main character in the series is a historian, and Deborah Harkness is a historian, but the book didn't it didn't work for me the way I wanted it to, but it's still, I can 100% see why this is such a beloved series. This is a fantastical series where you have a witch falling in love with a vampire, and lots of drama and time traveling ensues. There you go. I'm like, if you like that premise, you probably are going to like the series. If you don't like the premise, you're probably not going to like the series, period. So for me, it was kind of, I think I rated it 3 out of 5 stars. It was not a terrible book for me. I can see why people love it. It just didn't wow me the way I was hoping it would. And finally, the last book that I read in December was The Preacher's Promise by Piper Huguley. This is a historical romance written by a Black woman featuring Black characters. And it turns out that this is a whole series in which you follow this couple. It's based on a real story of a preacher and a teacher that founded this school in Georgia to teach specifically Black people to have, to go into the professions of preacher and teacher. And knowing that it's based on a real story is just really cool. You can see all the research that Huguley did that goes into the story, and yet it is very much a romance right? Like the focus is the couple and the work that the couple is doing. This is a kind of forced marriage trope here, because the heroine, her dad passes away before the story begins, and she's trying to figure out what to do with her life. In comes a request for a teacher from this town, and she's like, well, this is my answer. She heads over to Georgia from, where is it? It's from like Ohio, somewhere in the north. And she goes to Georgia, and it turns out they can't just have a single black woman in this town teaching. And they're like, well, maybe the two of you shouldn't marry. The teacher and the preacher shouldn't marry. And it kind of like ends up just happening. And then the couple has to then kind of go back and do the courting process of the relationship. And it's really cute. It's really adorable. There's no explicit sex in this book, so if you're somebody that avoids books with explicit sex, this is one that would be good for you. Both the hero and the heroine are religious, and so that does come up, but it's not a preachy book. It kind of is, right, because it's about a preacher, but it's not one of those books. It's not about religion, but that religion does play a central part in their lives, which 100% historically accurate, and Huguley does a very nice job of telling this story. So if you're interested in reading more Black historical romances, this is a really good one to check out. So that is it. Those are all the books I read in December. It does kind of give you an idea of all the different kinds of things that I read. Actually, now, looking back, I'm like, okay, a lot of romance novellas, but then also some fantasy, some mystery, and then some nonfiction. Let me know if you've read any of these books down below and what you think. I'm always happy to hear what other people think, especially if you disagree with me, because that's part of what this conversation is here on BookTube, is different people's takes on these books. But I'd really love to hear if you have read any of these, or if you are planning on reading any of them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.